I'm not saying this is the answer to Marvel's problems, but at the very least, it'll calm audiences down for a brief spell. Whoever we have to thank for this, I'll be sure to shake their hand and slap their ass on the way out, because what we got here was dead sexy.
And I'm dead sexy!
With No Way Home being Marvel's only resounding success, both critically and financially, since Avengers Endgame, I am pleased to say that after 4 entries that just about exemplify everything wrong with the state of the MCU at this point, it seems that the tedious and arduous wait bared fruits for such labour, and that is the final chapter for our merry band of bananas known as the Guardians of the Galaxy.
My emotions! My emotions!
Over the past couple of years, we've witnessed the steady decline of a once burgeoning empire that brought to life otherwise forgettable Z-list characters to now prominent beloved A-list heroes who, in the case of the Guardians, feel like remnants of a bygone era at this point that brought joy to the faces of millions, and when things were divisive, it came down to the writing choices.
He's got a point.
Hence why there was such debate over which of the 2 Guardians movies were better before this. The OG was carefully crafted with incredible music choices that emphasised the deeper contextual moments, and focused on our core cast coming together for a greater goal and realising they found something with each other. Then the sequel admittedly didn't hold up to many folks' expectations, but the core of it becoming about that of family and how we make it from what we choose when biology fails you was absolutely stellar.
You're right. We're family. We leave no one behind, except maybe you.
Now we arrive at the 3rd and final instalment that encapsulates everything fans adore about these bona fide arseholes, with cathartic resolutions to long-term character arcs and stories told over several movies, all knitted together with a foot-thumping soundtrack, and sets a new direction for our once altruistic bunch who go to the ends of the earth and back for each other and all those around them.
Are you crying? Am I crying? No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
Heading into this, I never believed that this movie could get me to do 2 things. First of which was cry over 4 CGI animals, but they managed to achieve that, and then secondly, get me to hate a villain more than I did with Negan in his opening appearance in The Walking Dead.
You are so gonna regret crossing me in a few minutes.
So as wrap-ups go, I'd say they stuck the landing with a good versus evil battle and getting you to feel the emotions. Let's be honest though, no movie ever escapes criticism, and for all its merits, there are a few points of contention for me at least that I'll get into after the breakdown. But if you're here to just listen to someone else rag on it because it was a Marvel and Disney product, this won't be the video for you, because I feel this movie is quite simply a flawed triumph.
Good job.
Now, for those of you that really don't want to see it but want to get an idea of what the film is about, let me break down the major plot points of this movie, and then we'll get into how I feel about it. The movie begins on nowhere as Quill is struggling to come to terms with the loveless existence he has without Gamora post-Endgame, though it was interesting to see none of this was covered in Thor Love and Thunder and seemed to have been quashed following Mantis' reveal in the holiday special, but whatever.
And don't you dare intercut this with footage of me freaking out.
After a montage showing everybody's positions here, the forgotten plot point from Guardians 2 returns, played by Eustace Scrubb, and he wrecks house, showing how fragmented things have become between our group, and as they struggle to present a unified front against him, it all leads to Rocket becoming severely injured.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
After Nebula shanks him to save Drax, he disappears and our group rush to save Rocket. Cut to a second of a series of flashbacks that will run throughout this movie documenting Rocket's creation, and in this one shows us his beginnings with a group of mutilated animals with various applications to them, consisting of a walrus, rabbit and otter named Teefs, Floor and Lila respectively. Back to the present day, where the group discover there's a failsafe ready to go off on Rocket's heart if anyone attempts to screw around with the electrical implants in his body. They quickly need to think of another way around this. It's here that they deduce one possibility to save him is to find an override code on the Orgoscope, the headquarters to the High Evolutionary's Orgo Corp. They make their way there, but are quickly intercepted by the Ravagers, headed up by a now out-of-time girl, Gamora from Avengers Endgame.
Surprise, motherfucker!
They agree to work together as Gamora can get them in, and after things break down inside the base, they retrieve Rocket's codes, but not before Thiel, a scientist working for the Evolutionary, deletes some of the data on it, preventing them from being able to save him as they intended.
You bastard!
Whilst this goes down, we discover that the Sovereign and many other species introduced in the Guardians movies were actually in fact created by the High Evolutionary, and after they come at him with several demands of their own, he puts them back in their place and demands that they find Rocket, as he wishes to replicate his intellect, or he promises to hit the kill switch on them. During this time, the crew figure out where Theo went to, and we receive 2 more flashbacks that show Rocket assisting the Evolutionary with his experiments and correcting a huge mistake in his designs, and the other being that he wants to escape with his friends one day after playing a game of tag. The Guardians arrive at a location known as Counter-Earth, an artificial design that's supposed to mimic our own Earth with an 80s aesthetic, likely implying when the Evolutionary last visited, and after a bit of back and forth with the locals, they manage to track down where he is. In our last flashback sequence for the movie, it's revealed that the Evolutionary was able to succeed in creating the animal-human hybrids without all of the aggression, and that's because of everything that Rocket was able to assist him with. From here, he'll be able to begin the creation of a new society, but after Rocket quizzes him about being involved with it, he rather callously informs Rocket that he and the other creations will not be a part of this, being deemed as abominations.
You dick!
When Rocket's returned to his cage, he begins constructing a device to escape with fragments he's clearly collected over time, and manages to unlock both his and Lila's cage. As he and Lila embrace, the Evolutionary predicted this and kills her. In the heat of the moment though, Rocket begins slashing at the Evolutionary's face, and following a quick shootout, he turns to see that both Teefs and Floor were killed in the melee, and we close on him escaping from the High Evolutionary.
My emotions! My emotions!
Back to the present, where Peter and Groot are met with the High Evolutionary, who reveals that he'll save Rocket if Peter returns him. As they argue, it turns into a skirmish with one of the Evolutionary's creations hunting down Rocket and almost killing Gamora. Warlock quickly intercepts them and kills the abomination, but Gamora saves Rocket, and as the fight reaches a crescendo around Peter and Groot, a fail-safe is activated, destroying Counter-Earth, and in the melee, Aisha is killed as well, sending Warlock back to Gamora, who tries to pilot the Bowie to get everybody off-world. As this occurs, Peter and Groot manage to collect what they need from Theo and kill him in the process, and reunite with Gamora, but discover that Nebula, Drax and Mantis, who thought that Pete was still on the Evolutionary's warship, have become trapped inside, and are now being held hostage. Before this though, Peter and Gamora manage to revive Rocket, who for a brief moment reached the afterlife, and is promised a reunion with his friends one day, but for now he's told he's needed elsewhere for something greater and is returned to us. Pete contacts Kraglin, telling him to mobilize their forces and meet them there. Peter, Gamora, Rocket and Groot engage the Evolutionary ship to save the others, however the others manage to find their own way out thanks to Mantis, and begin to tear the ship apart. The Evolutionary meets them with his own army, who begin to destroy Nowhere when Kraglin works some magic with the arrow and manages to wipe them out. Pete tells Kraglin to get the head of Nowhere lined up with an opening on the enemy ship to get a collection of kids and animals that the Evolutionary's been experimenting on out alive, and it's here at this moment when the Guardians unify one last time to take down the High Evolutionary. They succeed in this and return to Nowhere, almost losing Pete in the process, but is quickly saved by Adam Warlock, and we close on Gamora returning to the Ravagers. Mantis goes soul searching, Pete returns to Earth for his grandfather, Rocket and Groot take over the Guardians, and Nebula and Drax stay on Nowhere to create a new community for the refugees.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
And that's honestly as brief as I can make it for this bloody movie. But what I didn't include in that rundown was the emotional nuances, character moments, callbacks and deeper subtext that are unpacked within the 2-hour 30-minute time frame. There is a lot I loved about this final chapter to the Guardians, but to close on a happier note as this movie did, let me get my gripes out the way first.
Here it comes, y'all!
Beginning with the eccentricities, absurdities and humour we've grown to expect from the Guardians at this point. Some of them fell into place, but others felt like exhaustive attempts to lean into the irreverent humour James Gunn is well known for. It felt like Gunn had run his best comedic spots in the other movies and drew back on them in subtle ways that if you're eagle-eyed enough you would have spotted, but otherwise it lacked the sincerity in places that made the humour so unique in the first installment. You know, before Kevin started to get every director to run a fucking comedy movie.
Why are you the way that you are?
But truly, when it worked, it did work. The highlights for me at least were Groot becoming a walking head, then a mini kaiju. The use of profanity was excellent, and a lot of Drax's dialogue got me too, but ultimately there were just moments that didn't tickle me like the previous movies did. And that's okay, because taste is subjective, but some of the absurdities that were intended to be humorous, like Lambshank for example, just fell flat for me, and a lot of the comedy moments with Warlock as well. Speaking of which, they did this guy dirty in this film. If you really wish to read between the lines, he was placed in the role of generic superhero fresh from the tube, meaning he never understood what it meant to be a hero until the final seconds brought him to Quill's aid, and that in which he chose to do. He was lacking motivation, emotional maturity, and depth throughout the majority of this, only finding himself when Aisha died and having his balls squeezed by the High Evolutionary. Warlock's intention eventually became about saving his people by capturing Rocket until it wasn't.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
There is a serious consistency issue here somewhere.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
As it progressed, it went from delivering comeuppance to the Guardians for their transgressions in Volume 2, to an order of retrieval to a state of survival, likely why Rocket didn't hold anything against him in the end when he becomes a member of the new Guardians. I won't sit here and pretend to be a comic book connoisseur for one moment, but what little understanding I do possess, he was a rational, competent and powerful ally in the comics, who originally held Vision's spot in the Infinity War storyline. So to go from that to this felt like a massive reduction in believability, but I'll grant you, Will Poulter, he did do his best with what he had. I just wish they'd gone a different direction and maintained his position as a force to be reckoned with from the start of the movie. Now, when it comes to generating a moving component for the story, you often need something to call back on or rely on in general, and in the case of Volume 3, it has 3 things as far as I can tell. The level of plot armor and convenience they provide are rather frustrating and remove the consequences of any situation in this moment when you remember that there's a thing that can sort it out, namely the medpacks, Groot and Nebula's arm.
How much for the gun?
Not for sale.
Okay, how much for the arm? Oh, I'll get that arm.
Starting with the medpacks, a factor I do not recall the Guardians using in their other feature films, and are suddenly a convenient means of keeping the plot and characters going, like with Rocket's revival, saving Drax, and even repairing Mantis' broken arm to name a few. Then Groot. I understand that he's not the previous Groot reborn, he is in fact a progeny of the first group, and we've witnessed his life cycle from Volume 2 to now, and it would appear that he's taken on all the best facets of everyone else around him, but how advanced does that make him? Because of how developed he is here, he was pretty much able to step in and dominate the situation with whatever he needed.
Ooh, how convenient!
Proven with the shootout with Peter, the wings, being able to save him on the way down, and in a small way taking on Warlock. And lastly, Nebula. I won't besmirch her character here because the range and depth explored in her throughout the MCU is one of their finest creations, with an incredible character arc both over these and the Avengers movies, but that new arm. It's incredible in the capabilities it possesses, and to a degree consists of nanotech, I'd imagine, making it so pliable, but like Groot, it is always ready to solve any situation. It is capable of piloting the High Evolutionary ship, acts as a holoprojector, and even stops Warlock in the beginning of the movie when no one else could, and offers the biggest assist generally throughout this entire escapade. So when you have various moving components like this that can protect your characters from any dire situation, at least for me, destroys some of the immersion and cheapens it somewhat. Especially when it would have benefited the story in one way or another for either Quill or Rocket to have died in this instance to truly motivate the Guardians to take on this piece of shit and become a worthy sacrifice. However, it made contextual sense to have Rocket at least be the saviour of every animal in the High Evolutionary's possession, and selfishly, I'm glad he survived. Then my final complaint goes hand in hand with one of the biggest compliments I could offer this finale. That is the High Evolutionary himself. I don't know if they chose this actor based on his acting prowess or the set of lungs that he possesses, but as great as his performance was, all he did was essentially scream at everything and everyone, and that felt like all he could do until he unleashed some power. He is the monster. The Evolutionary was desperate to remove the aggression and antagonistic nature that comes from living, that he couldn't even realise he needed to remove that in himself first. The imperfections of his experiments reflected him, from his aggression to his appearance, doubled down by the fact that Gamora revealed the damage that Rocket did in the final moments. Regardless of whatever society was built on Counter-Earth, it was always a byproduct of his personality and would forever be tainted by his inability to see what was already there. The simple-mindedness and one-dimensional one-dimensional attitude to him, you could say weakened his believability, but I think it worked perfectly, as it was made intentionally by Gunn and the actor himself, after having so many sympathetic villains like Thanos, Killmonger and Gore the God Butcher in the MCU. They wanted to simply present someone that was irredeemable and horrific.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
The complexity about him came from wanting to play God and this innate desire to perfect everything, when the quality to someone was in who they could become, as seen with our Guardians, and specifically the two most broken of the group, Nebula and Rocket. Perfection is often embracing what's there for what it is. It just so happens that Rocket was made into something even more superior, and he achieved more than he ever would as a regular Raccoon.
Don't call me a raccoon!
I'm sorry. I took it too far. I meant Trash Panda.
Now, onto the man of the hour himself. Without a doubt, the shining star of this was Rocket. An animated Raccoon managed to provide more weight and gravitas to an entire 2-hour 30-minute feature than Scott, Shuri, Jane and Strange did in their own fucking movies. The work behind Rocket's journey will be legendary in this universe of storytelling, and for it to evolve from lowly bounty hunter to captain of the Guardians and galactic hero does carry more to the memory of his friends, who in essence gave their lives for him to continue, and everything that he achieved here absolutely avenged them. Every moment with Rocket was beautifully done, his arc was extremely well crafted, and the CG held up here as well, and the performance from Bradley Cooper was phenomenal, who clearly gave everything for potentially the last time with this character.
I salute you, sir.
The balance of this too came from Nebula, who truly stepped up as both a proficient fighter and efficient leader, and despite my earlier criticisms with her arm becoming somewhat of a plot armor, she rose through the ranks on her own, growing from a belligerent psychopath who wished to become someone of value and part of a family to someone who has all that and more, even creating a home with the refugees and captives of the High Evolutionary, and breaking down when it was revealed that Rocket survived. It all proved that the Tin Woman had a heart. Her growth throughout this franchise has been amazing, and to touch on that even subtly with her owning up to her own arrogance and basic assumptions of Drax is the sort of shift and development we need to see. It's her overcoming the idea that people are only one way in life when she has changed over the course of events, as has those around her. Even affirming Drax's position on Nowhere being a father again to the youth of the community brings me legitimate joy. Coming to terms with her sister as well and prioritising saving Rocket over her own self-interests make her and Rocket two of the best characters ever committed to screen, let alone the MCU.
That's a bold statement.
As for our other misfits, it was awesome to see Quill come full circle with returning to Earth, but to see his journey end here, in a recovering state of depression, realising he's lost his unrequited love, is rather heartbreaking, but we can only hope that being reunited with his grandfather provides him some solace. Then to our once destroyer, now daddy. Drax becoming a father figure again was a move I never considered for him after being introduced as a senseless, dense, destructive arsehole, who admittedly was dealt a shit card, but it feels appropriate and necessary to redirect him now, with Mantis off on a journey of rediscovery, but I will miss his humour. Speaking of Mantis, I like the idea of her just reappearing somewhere down the road rather casually with her pet obelisks, and who knows, there's every possibility she could return, and I don't think she has to stray from the path of a Guardian forever just until she's found what she needs in life. Then to the last of our core cast, Gamora.
Where is Gamora?
Yeah, I'll do you one better. Who's Gamora?
I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?
She was a necessary inclusion to help Quill move on, but from this mission, hopefully she'll take a piece of the Guardians away with her, in the spirit of offering her services for good, and possibly reclaiming a few of the qualities that she had upon meeting Quill originally. And maybe one day we could be reunited with that very same Gamora. And is there really much to be said about Groot? The big lug was exactly what he needed to be in this, and offered some incredible moments that make up for the lack of use for him in the previous installments, but I would love to see his potential actualized as both Alpha or King Groot from the post-credit scenes, so make it happen.
Do it.
And as for everything else from this movie, the supporting cast were brilliant, from Cosmo to Kraglin, even a returning Yondu got me. And as the finale goes, this was a rocky one, but possibly the best it could have been for the Guardians. I'm saddened to see them go, but knowing that all of them are still out in the galaxy somewhere offers some relief that we could come back to them one day, so long as James Gunn is at the helm. The action was incredible, the visuals were the strongest since No Way Home in my opinion, music choices were fitting but not as good as the original movie, the stakes were there, the emotions were heavy, the levity was fair, every scene had intention and purpose, our 4 anthropomorphic protagonists were endearing, the villain was frightening, and for all its faults, this was a near perfect movie, and the best in almost 17 months of MCU content. I would highly recommend you going out of your way to watch this, but only if you have the context of the previous Guardian-based materials in your mind, as it's rich with callbacks and references and character movements to the dialogue that will get you feeling a little nostalgic by the end. And ultimately, that leaves me to declare that this movie is a stellar showing and the best from the MCU again since No Way Home, and is, as I said in the title and at the beginning, a flawed triumph. That's all I've got for this one though. Thank you so much for sitting through it. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up and subscribe for more like this down the road, and until next time everyone, take care and I'll catch you soon.